Hello, Wichita. Welcome back to another episode of Coffee Break, a special episode of Coffee Break with Sergeant Brian Mott from the traffic office.
I'm the fill-in, I guess.
Yeah, Chad is off this week. He is moving into his new home with his family, so we're excited for him. We got a guest host today. Excited.
Yep.
We're going to talk some traffic, maybe talk some turkey too, because it is Thanksgiving week.
It is, and in fact, this is my last day before I take off for the Thanksgiving holiday.
Okay.
So,
you got any big Thanksgiving plans?
we're going out of town. Me and my whole family.
Very cool.
So, meeting my sister and my mom and some other people out of town. Rented a house on VRBO and gonna go off over towards the Branson area.
Awesome. I haven't used VRBO. Is that better than Airbnb?
I don't know. It's Airbnb. It seems like right now their fees are getting higher and higher.
Are they getting higher?
I did watch a show too on I don't know, probably a couple weeks ago. It was like Airbnb disasters or something, and they showed this one New York apartment that they were renting a room, right? It was like $50 or $60 a night, and someone had built like a bed in their kitchen.
What?
And so it was in this person's kitchen, like $50 a night, and they'd fold down this bed in their kitchen for you.
So I like to get on Zillow every once in a while and just look at different houses in different areas, and sometimes I'll go look at New York just to see like what it's like, and it's ridiculous,
right?
How much like an apartment the size of my office is like $3,000 a month.
I had a friend that went out there and from high school went out there to go work on Broadway. Okay. She was like, actually, she's one of my sister's friends, and she was like a costume designer or something along those lines.
Interesting.
And she was living in a little tiny apartment, and got married and had to move out of the city to New Jersey because nobody. I mean, what are you gonna do?
Right.
It's
you
too expensive to have a family
there.
in there on that salary or whatever. So.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people probably don't live in the city. And it makes me wonder, too, how many, like, what do people do that live there? And, like, how do they afford these exorbitant, like, penthouse mansions or not mansions, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
The
big
fancy apartments.
Yeah.
Anyway. So it's Thanksgiving week. You're going out of town. We're all celebrating Thanksgiving. Are you turkey or ham guy?
I like ham, but the rest of my family likes turkey, and so we don't. Since I'm not the one cooking, I don't get the choice. So we'll have turkey, but I prefer ham.
Okay, interesting. And so part of the reason why you're here today is because this is kind of the first big holiday leading into the holiday season.
Right.
You got Thanksgiving, Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, everything, and New Year's Eve. And in a lot of that, there's going to be a lot of people getting together. There's going to be a lot of celebrations. There's probably going to be some alcohol consumed, right?
Yep. So
tell me a little bit about what goes along with that from your perspective as a traffic cop. Well,
so like I don't know if anyone's watching from the last time I was on the show or not, but I kind of handle the investigative side of the traffic unit. So over the holiday season, we kind of typically see an increase in both wrecks and alcohol related incidents. So people go out and have Thanksgiving parties and then Christmas parties and New Year's parties, and all of that contributes to people being out on the road. So it's kind of an emphasis for us. There's some other like programs that we'll run, some saturation patrols and things like that to try and take impaired drivers off the street. But when I was looking up some statistics, last year we had, in the month of December, we had 5 fatal collisions in Wichita that we responded to just in the month of December, right? Now, not all of those were necessarily impaired driving, but certainly probably some of them were, and I didn't look that deep into exactly how many of that there were. But so we know that, like, accidents go up and DUI-related incidents go up. So the more public education we can do on those kinds of things, the better off we end up in the long run, hopefully.
Right. So. And so we have someone with the DUI Victim Center of Kansas here today to kind of talk about what they do. They're a nonprofit here in town. They work with, they do victim impact panels when folks are convicted of DUI and impairment charges. So we are going to get a quick refill. We'll get her on here and interview her, and we'll be right back. All right, we are back with Heather Plaza from the Victims Center, DUI Victim Center of Kansas. Heather, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
So we always have a similar format on each episode of our podcast here. The first question is always the same. Have you ever seen our podcast or listened to it?
I will.
Okay.
I assure
you. If you say no, you will not be the first person. There are plenty. Had you seen it before you came on?
I had watched a couple episodes intentionally because I figured when I came on the first time, you were going to ask me that question.
Yeah.
So
You did
I
some
made sure
research.
that I watched a couple before I came on the first time.
That's some good background research. So, if you don't mind, could you kind of just tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and how you got involved with the DUI Victim Center?
Absolutely. So I have been working with the DUI Victim Center for just about almost 2 years now.
Okay.
I have a background in working with nonprofits. I had been out in Augusta for about 5 years before this, and in Augusta I was working with a group that helps adults and families get out of poverty.
Okay.
And in that work, there is a lot of emergency and crisis management, a lot of working with people through processes to reach goals. And in that position, I did a lot of resource building, creating collaborations within that community so that we could act more as a unit, as a community, to support families on their process through getting out of poverty. I met the executive director for the DUI Victim Center through that work.
Okay.
And when the victim advocate position became open, because my predecessor, Jim Pikett, who is really well known in the community, was just an incredible victim advocate. He has tried several times unsuccessfully to retire. This was his latest attempt at finally retiring. And I was offered the position. Coming into this, I think one thing that's struck me recently about it is that there is a lot of holding space for grief. So we're not really working towards goals, so to speak. Court can feel like a process, and that in itself can feel like what we're taking one step at a time towards trying to get through. But in this space, and what we believe at the DUI Victim Center, we are very focused on victim services and on building a space where we can create a community for people, where they know that once court is over, you don't have a cutoff date. You're always welcome to come back in 2 years later, 5 years later, because grief, especially from these kinds of crashes, is a long-term experience.
Right.
And the connection point for me in this work was not that I was impacted by drunk driving or by impaired driving. The connection point for me is that I am a daughter of addicts. And so growing up with two alcoholics at home and my dad with a very long-term crack addiction, I know grief from that side, what it's like to be perpetually impacted by addiction and by people's habits around using. And so this felt like a space where not only could I help hold space for people that were impacted in a different way, but it's also a place where we can start having conversations with providers in the community about how we can start making a dent in in addiction. Because this is, I always say in nonprofit, your goal in nonprofit is to be put out of business.
Right.
But the complicated thing when it comes to impaired driving is that we see people who come through our victim impact panels, and it's a first-time thing, and you can tell the process of what it was like to get stopped, what it was like to get arrested, what it was like to have to go through all of the hoops that are necessary to go through when they get charged with a DUI has really shaken them. So we'll have people that'll come in and they'll say, this was the first time that I was ever pulled over. I don't ever want to have to go through it again.
Interesting.
And then we have people who are our second, third, fourth time offenders. And at that point, we know that we're talking about people with addictions. We're
Right.
talking about habitual users. So that's the other piece. Not only are we trying to have an impact on those people that all it's going to take is a first time, and that's a huge, that is a something that I really appreciate about what our officers are doing. I know that it is a heck of a lot of work to go through the stops and the DUI paperwork, but I see it every day, the people who have that experience and they're not willing to have to go through it again.
Right.
So we're making an impact there, but then we're also looking at how we can partner with treatment centers and places like the Phoenix to start making a dent on addiction, because if we're not having those conversations with people who are already suffering from addiction and also in a prevention capacity with our school districts, with people that could be on the road to experiencing addiction, then this is something that we're going to be dealing with forever.
Right. Yeah.
And that may still be the case.
Right.
But we believe that it's important to look at the whole picture. And I think that because of my background and experience with people in addiction, it has influenced the kind of work that we're doing now.
So you mentioned one thing that I know you guys do, but maybe they didn't pick up on when you were talking, but you talked about the victims panels that you guys put on. Tell us a little bit about that process, because I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. It is not uniform across the state of Kansas, which is something we're also hoping to have an impact on. But here, especially in Sedgwick County, anybody that is charged with a DUI is ordered to go through a victim impact panel. We provide 5 panels a month in English, 1 in Spanish. I do the 1 in Spanish. And through those panels, we've started to evolve in the way that we deliver the message. We're using that space to engage in conversation with the people that are coming in. We're asking questions. A lot of our panels will start off with the blanket question, why do we drive impaired? And through the conversation, we use a concept that we developed around the hero-villain dichotomy. And that conversation basically sounds like we think of heroes as the people that show up after tragedy has struck, when in reality, we have the ability every single day, by making decisions with integrity on the road, we have the opportunity every day to be heroes by deciding before we leave the house to put that playlist on so we're not looking down at the phone, by making the decision, whatever the decision needs to look like for each individual to not drive impaired. We can keep our lives protected and we can protect the lives around us. And we're sharing stories and really reconnecting people with the idea that you're not just surrounded by cars on the road, you're surrounded by lives. And when we're telling the story of people's lives and what it meant when that life was lost. We're hoping to make a connection to that, because on the flip side, we also talk about being the villain, and the fact that once you're in a court of law and your decision has impacted somebody else's life forever, it doesn't matter that you're a great father, that you're a great friend, that you are the kind of person that's shown up for the people in your life. We're not having those conversations. We're talking about the night you decided to get behind the wheel and it changed somebody else's life forever. And the burden of the villain is not just the jail time. It's the lifelong having to carry the knowledge that you took somebody else's life. So engaging in questions and the messaging that we're using, we're encouraging people to become a community of heroes and to take that message and realize that this, I think about it a lot, that I've got kids at home that are getting ready to drive and they're watching my beliefs and my habits and my attitudes. And whether or not I'm saying, hey, son, yeah, driving impaired is okay. Or if you have a few drinks but you still feel okay, go for it. I might not be having that conversation out loud, but if that's what it looks like through my actions, that's what they're picking up on.
Interesting.
So I know I met you just the other night when you came to the Central Bureau, and we're talking to our third shift DUI squad that we have that works in the traffic section, where they come out and focus solely on impaired driving, or not solely, but at least that's the big part of their mission, is to take impaired drivers off the street. And one of the things that you told me that night was that we see an increase in impaired driving over the holidays, which I think makes sense to some people. They kind of know that's probably, doesn't surprise anyone that that's the case. But you have a campaign that you run through the holidays through the DUI Victim Center that talks. You gave us some magnets with the names of victims on us. Can you tell us a little bit about that too?
Absolutely. So we started doing a holiday drive back in 1994. And Holiday Drive is a campaign that focuses on the increase in impaired driving during the holidays. And we do a few things for Holiday Drive. We first thank officers for the work that they're doing, for making the stops, for making the decision to put their own lives on the line. I know that even just with making stops and being pulled over on the road, pulling over one impaired driver when there are others that are headed in your direction, constantly puts officers in the line of fire in that way. So we're thanking officers for the work that they're doing, but we're also taking the opportunity to honor the lives that have been impacted and lost. We have a group of volunteers that comes every year, and it takes several hours, and they sit there with lists of names of victims, and they end up writing over 500 names on magnets and ribbons, and those are victims just from here in Kansas. And then we distribute those and take those to different police departments all around Kansas. We put that information out on social media for this campaign to try and also raise awareness in the community that when they see those ribbons or they see those magnets, it's representative of a life that was taken by somebody driving impaired. And so while we are out celebrating with our families, we can remember that this, again, is another opportunity to be a hero by deciding, I'm not going to be one of the ones that's going to put your loved one's life at risk this holiday season.
So we talk pretty frequently about impaired driving, and we work on the enforcement side. You're on the kind of advocacy side, and it seems like it's pretty universally accepted that it's a bad idea to drive impaired, but yet we still see it, and we see it pretty often. What do you think we need to do, like as a society in general, to kind of really hit the message into people that you really shouldn't drive impaired?
That is a great question. And I am going to be really transparent here when I say that for myself personally, and I talk about this in panel, growing up with addicts and with alcoholics, the handful of times that I got behind the wheel impaired, after having 2 or 3 drinks out at dinner with some friends, I thought I was doing pretty good comparatively. It felt like I could be blackout drunk and abandoning my kids, or I could be, out having dinner and a few drinks and I'm okay. The house is right down the road. When I talk about it now and about the experience of being in court the first 2 times with the first 2 families that I worked with, it just hits me over and over that our mentalities around impaired driving are influenced heavily by the kinds of environments that we grow up in. So
Right.
again, going back to what you're seeing is informing what you think is okay. And I think that officers do a good job at this too, but when we're partnering with school districts and trying to work on prevention and having those conversations, it's also really important to get candid and to get vulnerable. Kids are going through hell at home. And most of the time, if we're drinking or using, when we talk about it in panel, we don't, if it had no effect on us, if it didn't help us in some way feel something different or not feel, we probably wouldn't be doing it. And so conversations around, even around mental health and how we can't be using substances to treat mental health, but we have to create spaces where we can have those conversations, where people can say, I'm struggling with this. Those things are really important. Partnering with addiction recovery resources in the community is really important. It is definitely going to take some big conversations
Right.
to shift people's ideas. I keep trying to drive home the importance of reconnecting a decision to get behind the wheel impaired, or even to text and drive, or to be going 100 miles an hour
Right.
with the life that we're putting at risk, and reconnecting with the fact that it really is. It's not an independent activity that we do when we drive. We're really
Right.
playing Russian roulette with other people's lives when we make that decision.
That's something that kind of struck me when you talked earlier about how, trying to remind people that there's other lives in those cars and not just cars. Because I think it's super easy for people to just, you get road rage on the highway, some random person you never met, and it's easy for us to kind of dehumanize the other riders on the road. And we got to remember that every person in every car is another life. And when we're doing that stuff, like you said, it's not just us that we're affecting. So I think that's super important, and appreciate all the work that you do there. So
Thank you. I think people care, if we can connect with what's most important to people. Some of the messages that we put out sound like patriots understand the value of life. Connecting with what's important in our Kansas communities. There is a direct link between the things that are important to Kansans and protecting people's lives. And protecting people's lives means that we can't drive impaired.
right. So you have the holiday campaign. How long does that go till?
We usually ask that officers keep those ribbons and magnets on the cars through the beginning of January.
Okay. And so with us, we're Thanksgiving's at the end of the week. We're heading into the holiday season. What's I guess, words of advice or wisdom you give to the average folks to kind of do their part to help curb this increase that we see?
Driving impaired during the holidays is the ultimate irony. We all wish each other Happy Thanksgiving. We wish each other a Merry Christmas. And so much of that is about the time we get to spend with the people that we love. And we are crazy about the people that we love. And the roads are full of people that are incredibly loved. And so part of honoring the holiday is honoring those lives and making good decisions while we're on the road.
Very well said. You have anything, Sarge?
No, one of the things we talk about with people when people are asking questions about the traffic section or whatever, is we talk all about always have a plan to get home, right? Like nobody's saying you can't go out and have a couple drinks with dinner or anything like that. I mean, that's not the message, right? The message is if you're going to choose to do that and you're an adult and you're allowed to do that, then make sure you have a plan to get home somehow. And, in today's day and age with like rideshare and all these things that we didn't used to have in society, it's not really a lot of a reason for anybody to get behind the wheel, impaired and whatever. So, and the other thing, I've been a police officer now for 24 years, or with Wichita for 24 years. And when I started kind of working in the traffic world, one of the things that struck me about these wrecks that happen in DUIs, especially some of the fatals or the very critical, serious ones, is really just super random, right? Yeah. Anybody can be driving down the road and get hit by a drunk driver, right? Like we all share that risk on the road. It's just if you're in the wrong spot at the wrong time, meeting somebody that had made a bad decision to do that, right? So, I think if people think about that when they're making plans to go out, or they think, it could be my family that's out there randomly on the road. I think that helps that mindset of don't do this and make a plan to get home kind of thing, or I hope that does for most people at least.
Yeah, so. And it should. So switching gears a little bit, we play a game every week on this podcast, and with it being Thanksgiving this week, we have a Thanksgiving-themed version. So it's called One Has to Go. This week it's Thanksgiving side dishes. You have to choose one of those side dishes. It's going to go away forever. It never existed. You never got to taste it. You never get to taste it again. We have mashed potatoes, stuffing or dressing, depending on what you want to call it, cranberry sauce, and sweet potato casserole or sweet potato pie.
Are you sure that's cranberries, not beets?
Yeah, no, I searched cranberry sauce, and that's the picture I got. So
doesn't look like sauce to me.
Well, that's the one. You never had the stuff in the can that just comes out in a single thing. That's the good. That's what we had.
Well, I know I'm not the one playing the game, but if that came out of a can, I probably would get rid of that one because I'm not really sure what that is.
We all play the game.
Oh, we do. Okay. Yeah. Well, then that whatever that is on the bottom right or bottom left. That's what I'm getting rid of.
So I definitely wanted to cheat and say, that I take the mashed potatoes out because I could have that at any other time of the year. But if I could never have mashed potatoes again, I would be a sad Southerner.
Yeah, that's a huge staple.
I am probably going to have to go with that blob that came out of the can.
Yeah,
too.
See, really?
Yeah.
You guys are getting rid of that.
I'm still not. I don't think it's cranberry sauce, but
it's
somebody that's watching can fact check that.
But it's a hardened sauce, I guess. So
okay,
it's like when you leave a sauce in the fridge too long. I'm gonna get rid of the sweet potato casserole.
Well, why?
Just because to be different.
You don't like sugar?
No, I like sugar.
No,
I'm not the hugest sweet potato fan. I'll eat it, but it's not. It's not like my favorite. But
yeah, well, there's really only one time that you eat sweet potato pie anyway,
Thanksgiving.
right? So Thanksgiving. That's
I've
about
never
it.
had it any other time.
Yeah,
cranberry sauce though, I never have that outside of Thanksgiving either.
Is that what your cranberry sauce looks like when you have it in Thanksgiving?
Yeah, we literally just have it. It's literally there, and you just slice it, and you put the slices wherever you want. Well, that's a tradition.
That's the way we grew up, too.
Yeah, exactly.
Slice that up.
Sliced sauce.
Well, clearly I've never experienced cranberry sauce.
You're going to have to try that this year.
No, I don't know.
I challenge.
It's too late. I already eliminated it. So.
Oh, that's true. It's not in your diet anymore. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast. We appreciate it. We appreciate what you guys do at the DUI Victim Center. Looking forward to seeing the ribbons on the cars. We are going to get a quick refill, and we will be right back. That was Heather Plaza with the DUI Victim Center of Kansas. Very, very good interview.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could tell she cares a lot about what she does.
Yeah, I've been in the traffic world for several years now, and we've had a good working relationship with the DUI Victim Center. They do a lot of good work. Sometimes we refer people over to them that have been impacted by one of these fatal or critical crashes, so that they can help the victim's family. They do a lot of good work with them.
Yeah, I know, as a patrol officer, we used to see those ribbons every year at the end of the year, and it always just kind of hits you how many people are impacted by impaired driving just here locally, every year. And we often don't. We respond to the scene of the wrecks, or we arrest the drivers, and then we kind of don't really know what happens to the victims afterwards unless we follow up on that. So it's nice to know that there are people that are advocating for them and helping get the message out that we gotta stop impaired driving.
Yeah, it's a good partnership with us, because my detectives will come in and they're focused on getting the case put together,
right,
and charges filed, and not intentionally, but just because that's a lot of work. Sometimes they aren't able to kind of walk with those victims as much as maybe they would like to.
Right.
So it's nice to have somebody, a partnership agency that kind of does those things.
Yeah. So. Very cool. Well, thank you also for filling in today. Appreciate it. I am, it's Thanksgiving week, and I am thankful that you're here on the podcast.
Well, maybe I'll be the regular fill-in guy.
You can be our fill-in Chad. We'll just start calling you Chad too.
Chad too.
Chad Mock.
Chad TOO.
Do you have any good Thanksgiving jokes?
Well, see, I knew you were going to ask, because last time I wasn't prepared.
Yeah.
So, what is a turkey? How does a turkey with a limp, how does it walk?
Oh, man. It waddles.
Close. It wobbles.
Wobbles. Okay.
And this one's a good police-related one, all right? So how did the police officer come to Thanksgiving dinner?
I don't know.
To make sure no one was over the feed limit.
For the feed limit? Okay, here's one I thought of yesterday that might take a little bit of thinking. Why did the turkey get kicked out of the football game?
Why?
It tryptophan. Get it?
I get it. Yeah.
If you don't know, tryptophan is the chemical in the turkey that makes you sleepy, supposedly. Yep. So anyway, it's really dumb.
And you fall asleep during the football games when you eat tryptophan.
Yeah. I just fall asleep anyway. Around 4 p.m., lights out. That's siesta time for me.
Yep.
But I hope you have a fantastic Thanksgiving. Hope everybody watching has a great Thanksgiving. And we will be back next week for another episode of Coffee Break. Stay tuned. See you next time.